Hi, my name is Alexei. I'm gonna make a video highlights of Deuteronomy from New Covenant theology perspective or view. Um, and reason I'm doing this is that some of the New Covenant theology I do embrace. Some of the teachers I like. I mean, some of the people who embrace this view I like. Some people I do not like. For example. What's his name? Like Steve Atkinson. He's on Sermonario. You can listen his explanation of New Covenant. What's him? Blake White. Some of the things he said I like. Few things I like that David J. Gay, who's from England. Some works that he does I also like. Funniest thing, like John Riesinger, his view of the Sermon on the Mountain, I do not agree with. It pretty much means that Christ exposes the law, who was still under the old covenant, and pretty much with the new covenant, when Christ was crucified, that's when the old covenant was fulfilled, when Christ says it has finished. Pretty much he annuls everything, like all the covenant law, and he establishes the new. Like I said, with John Riesinger, I disagree. Um, so before we go to Book of Deuteronomy, I wanna just read one particular verse. It's in Hebrews 7:12, which says, "For when there is a change in the priesthood, there is necessity a change in the law as well." I mean, of course, like I myself, I used to be thinking this is just talking about the Levitical priesthood. But the problem is uh, this judicial, sacramental, and moral law is intertwined. For example, Numbers talks about if a husband thinks that a woman, his wife, committed adultery upon him, he have to take her to the Levitical priesthood, and they would make her drink water, and if what's the name, uh, if she has been cheated upon her husband, her belly will swell up. So the point is that adultery, which is what's the name, which is supposedly moral law, and some of the parts of so-called moral law, I do see it, but I would just call it eternal, not law, but more of a eternal eternal order. There we go. Because moral law, it's like it's always going down to commandments and different things. So I mean, but the point is this: how I interpret this text is that we're not talking about just a little bit of law, like just okay, sacramental law. We're talking about the whole law. I would say that Christ, when he came in, he was under the law of Moses, but during his ministry, he did start changing some of the law of Moses. Like for example, Sermon on the Mount. We're gonna touch this one when it comes to divorce, particularly. Then talk about food. Talk about wars. Talk about pretty much prisoners, female prisoners of war whom what's his name whom who can become a pretty much a wife or concubine, which in my opinion, like concubine, it's almost like a sex slave. Let's just be honest. So I would say that Christ came in. Um, some scholars say it's 3 BC. So we'll just say 3 BC, and then he started his ministry around either 27 AD or 30 AD, and this ministry started, and his ministry lasted for about 3 years. So I just say at 30 AD, Christ started his ministry, and then at 33, he died, rose again, and ascended into heaven. So the point is this, that when Christ, he already kind of was teaching his disciples that, for example, even a fasting, you know, some people came in and said, why is John the Baptist and disciples of Pharisees fast and your disciples are not? Well, nobody puts the old wine in the new wineskins. Nobody puts the old laws and regulations of the Old Testament into the new covenant. And some people try. And to be honest with you, I used to try this too. I used to, try to divide this book of Deuteronomy in 3 types of laws and stuff, like sacramental, judicial, and moral. But honestly, whatever. Some of the things, it can help you to interpret better some of the things of the New Testament. So this is kind of like a pre study of Deuteronomy, because some of the things you might have questions. Do I have to keep this? I don't have to keep it. Is this applies to me today? Should I have to follow this or that? And I say, well, some of the things actually no, and some things it's either redefines, or some things is either so some things helps you to understand the scriptures better of the New Testament. So that's, let's keep when I'm gonna go over the book of Deuteronomy, just keep this in mind. So let's see. So let's start in chapter 1, and the first thing that totally kind of was interesting to me, first things first, is that God is those are the words that Moses spoke to all Israel. So when I used to be a covenant theologian, like when I used to go to Presbyterian church and I read a bunch of Puritans, now Israel is the church. Now I disagree. I would say Israel was a shadow of the church, and substance belongs to the church. So some of the laws either been redefined or interpreted a little bit differently, or just straight out being fulfilled upon the cross, and whole new law is established after Christ's resurrection. So notice all. So those are the words that Moses spoke to all Israel beyond the Jordan in the wilderness. So interesting thing, like first things comes to my interest is that in verse 10 talks about the Lord your God has multiplied you, and behold, you are today as numerous as the stars of heaven. Interesting things that numerous stars in heaven is that it can also, look at, for example, John Gill. Now they were about 600,000, 600 men fit for war. So we can say about 2 million children and women, maybe 3 million. So the point is this, that especially in book of the Revelation talks about refers about, like, stars. I mean, actually, Acts chapter 2, like, stars will fall from heaven. Maybe it not necessarily means that, like, literal stars in cosmos, but actually Jews will fall, nation of Israel. And I would say nation of Israel has fallen in 70 AD. There's no more biblical Jews. There's descendants of Jewish descent, but today there's no such thing as a Jew that would fulfill requirements of the Old Testament. So there's no more Jew or Gentile. It's either you in Christ or out of Christ. So next point. By the way, I'm gonna go just on specifically on the verses that either many preachers would just skip over to it, or just say, hey, I hope it didn't exist, or just kind of take it out of context, trying to explain it away. And by the way, if you're atheist, I'm sure, like, some of the things about, like, I think it's Deuteronomy 20 something talks about if a man gets a hold of a virgin who is not betrothed, what does it actually teach? And yeah, it I just tell you straightforward. Yeah, talks about rape, but we'll get to it. So let's go to the verse. Let's go to the verse 30. 34 and 35. And the Lord heard your words and was angry, and he swore, not one of those men of this evil generation shall see the good land that I swore to give to your fathers, except Caleb and the son of Jehonich. He shall see it, and to him and to his children I will give the land on which he has trodden, because he has wholly followed the Lord. The interesting thing is that this evil generation, Christ sometimes in, like, talk, especially in Gospel of Matthew, talk to this evil generation. This generation shall not pass away, and all things shall be fulfilled. Said before, it refers to 70 AD, destruction of Jerusalem. Christ spoke in metaphorical language, and it has fulfilled this destruction of Jerusalem. So another verse that many proponents of age of accountability sometimes use, which I believe there is no such thing as an age of accountability. You're not gonna go to heaven because you're on the age of 12, 9, whatever preacher told you, because it's so many. It's interesting thing, like, I made a video, actually 3 videos about children unbelieving, I call it wicked and unbelieving babies go to hell. And interesting thing is that if you look at the verses, which one of them is Deuteronomy 1:39, and as for you little ones, who said would become a prayer, and your children who today have no knowledge of good or evil, they shall go in there, and to them I will give it, and they shall possess it. Well, I mean, first of all, there's nothing about babies going to heaven. It just talks about, particularly before, that this generation versus that generation. And the children, it's like, have no knowledge of good and evil. And where is the knowledge of good and evil come from? Well, first of all, when Adam and Eve ate a fruit from the tree, you automatically have good and evil within you already ingrained. But the New Testament answers it. The knowledge of good and evil comes from the law, Old Testament law. They have no knowledge of good and evil because it reveals within a law, or in some sense in their conscience. But of course, conscience is, you can actually use the conscience to train a conscience, either righteousness or wickedness, and your consciences get used to evil or to good. So it's no knowledge of good and or evil, just refers to no knowledge of the law. But yet, without the law, man has perished. So continue on. And the Lord said to me, verse 42. And the Lord said to me, say to them, do not go up or fight, for I am not in your midst, lest you be defeated before your enemies. Interesting thing about this that some things, well, we're going to talk about chapter 2. That actually, let's go to chapter 2, which talks about Esau, like Esau's possessions. Let's just start verse 1. Then we turned and journeyed into the wilderness in the direction of the Red Sea, as the Lord told me. And for many days we traveled around Mount Seir. Then the Lord said to me, you have traveled around this mountain country long enough. Turn northward and command the people. You are about to pass through the territory of your brothers, the people of Esau, who live in Seir, and they will be afraid of you. So be careful. Do not contend with them, for I will not give you any of their land, no, not as much as for the heel of the foot to tread on, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. It talks about purchasing food with money and drink. But interesting thing about this encounter is that in Genesis, where Isaac gave a blessing to Jacob and Esau, and yet, and God, and the blessings of Esau mentions else in book of Malachi. Let's read it. Chapter 1. the oracle the oracle of the word of the Lord to Israel by Malachi. I have loved you, says the Lord, but you say, how have you loved us? Is not Esau Jacob's brother, declares the Lord? Yet I have loved Jacob, but Esau I have hated. I have laid waste his hill and country, and left his heritage to jackals of the desert. If if Edom says, we are shattered, but we will rebuild the ruins, the Lord of hosts says, they may build, but I will tear down, and they will be called the wicked country, and the people with whom the Lord is angry forever. So notice this, that but Esau I have hated. God, many people are trying to say God loves everybody. Well, God's love is eternal. Matter of fact, before foundation of the world, God chose certain group of people unto salvation, another group for damnation. And yeah, Esau just represents either God loved you before you were born, or God hated you before you were born. So let's look at Romans 9:11. For those that were not yet born and done anything either good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue, not because of works, but because of him who calls. She was told, the older will serve the younger, as it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. What shall we say then? Is there injustice on God's part? By no means. For he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. So then it depends not on human will or exertion, but on God who has mercy. So the point is this, that God fulfilled the promises, the blessings unto Esau, yet Esau's temporal blessings will be given unto jackals to destruction, and where the Lord is angry with people forever, which is hell, ultimately. So let's go back to Book of Deuteronomy once again. Like I said, it's a highlight. I'm not gonna go like in super depth of each verse, but I'm just give you highlights, and particularly verses that I'm sure people been thinking about for a while. Let's go to the Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 30. Actually, start with verse 26. So I sent messengers from the wilderness of Kedemoth to Kihon, the king of Heshabon, with words of peace, saying, let me pass through your land, and I will go only by the road. I will turn aside neither to the right nor to the left. You shall sell me your food for money, that I may eat, and give me water for money, that I may drink. Only let me pass through on foot, as the sons of Esau who lived in Seir, and the Moabites who lived in Ar did for me, until I go over the Jordan into the land that the Lord our God is giving to us. But, important verse, but Sihon, the king of Heshbon, would not let us pass by him, for the Lord your God hardened his spirit and made his heart obsolete, that he might give that he might give him into your hand as he is this day. And the Lord said to me, behold, I have begun to give Sihon and his land over to you. Begin to take possession, that you may occupy his land. So the point is this, that God hardened his heart so that he would go into the battle, and the king of Sihon would be destroyed. Just like Pharaoh, God hardened Pharaoh's heart in Exodus. I think it starts in 2 or 3. Actually, interesting thing, like before Moses said anything to what's the name to Pharaoh, God already predetermined to show his power. So let's read some of the bush encounter. So verse 6, and he said, I am the Lord of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of the hand of that land, to do a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now behold, the cry of the people of Israel have come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of the Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, but I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of the Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your father has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Let me find this. Where is it? Wonders. Jebusites, 3 days journey. Where is it? Silver. Hand strike Egypt. Will not let you go unless mighty hand. So chapter 4. Okay. And okay. Interesting things that's interesting things that Moses said, and also kind of one of the things that's mentions in Deuteronomy. Then the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute, or deaf, or seeing, or blind? Is it not I, the Lord?" So in book of Deuteronomy later on talks about um, I kill and I make alive, I heal and I wound. So it's kind of similar. This is the answers that God is the one who makes blind, deaf and mute. And some people do get a healing. Ultimately, everything is to glorify God. So in Deuteronomy, the answer is given to this question. Exodus 4:11, and that's God who makes people mute, deaf, and blind, and sometimes God heals them. And like I said, God doesn't love everybody, so that's why He doesn't heal everybody. Man, where is it? Go back and spoke commands, affliction. Let my people go. We may journey. Hold the same day for me. Harden. But I mean, this is interesting thing. Like if you count the times God hardened Pharaoh's heart, and let's just say, I guess we'll do this like a football or soccer way. Like if you play soccer, one goal, like for example, if the Bible says God hardened Pharaoh's heart, or God hardened Egyptian's heart, the last one, versus Pharaoh hardened his heart, I'll let you figure out yourself on who won. But ultimately, the heart of the king is the hand of God, and He turns his heart wherever He wills. So, going back, let's just go back to the book of Deuteronomy. We now at Deuteronomy 2, verse 34. Notice this. Actually, let's start at 33. And the Lord your God give him over to us, and we defeated them and his sons and all his people. And we captured all his cities at that time and devoted to destruction every city, men, women, children. We left no survivor. As well, let's look at this verse at the King James Plus, which gives us Hebrew. And I just wonder, utter destruction, women and little ones. And little ones refer to children, little ones. Noun masculines. Let's look at the it occurs about 45 times It translates usually in King James little or little children. So either little or children, or I would say little children. Interesting things that it's interesting that many Christians, actually some Christians I should say, either say that it never had happened, which is denying the scriptures, or trying to come up with a moralistic way to explain, oh, those people are bad. Well, everybody's bad. All deserve to die and burn in hell. And God predestined some people to be born in this Jebusite family to be exterminated. So, and that's God's prerogative. Whatever He wants to do, He does it. So, I'm not gonna apologize. And you might say, like later on talks about thou shalt not kill or thou shalt not murder. um, to me, God can do whatever He wants to do. He can tell me one day thou shalt not murder, next day go kill all Amalekites, Amorites, whatever, men, women, children. And I'm not going to try to explain away. Some of the things that I have my personal explanation, I would say, in my head, but I'm not going to say it. The reason is this, because God's ways is God's ways. I mean, I can try to pretend explain, a way, especially rape of a virgin, and how now she's is made to be what's this the wife of this man. I mean, I can explain why, like economically and culturally and law-wise, like from other parts of Deuteronomy, why it would be a better way to do it. But I'm not, even though I do have some, like I said, some thoughts about. So let's continue on. Let's go to verse 31, where it's oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, chapter, I'm sorry, destroy utterly men, women, and children. Let's skip that. And then interesting thing, to the chapter 3, verse 3. So the Lord our God delivered into our hands Og, also the king of Bashan, and all his people, and we smite him until none has left to him remain. So no survivors, no survivor left. Continue on. Chapter 3, verse 6. It says, it pretty much reiterates again. Oh, it actually talks about another king being destroyed. And we destroyed them, and we devoted them to destruction, as we did Sihon, the king of Shibon, devoted the destruction every city, men, women, and children. But all the livestock and the spoils of the cities we took as our plunder. So pretty much they killed men, women, children, and took their livestock for food. And from New Testament perspective, once again, New Covenant theology. I know some of the, I would call it historical theonomy or classical theonomy, where some of the kings used this text to annihilate the city, like one of them, I think, was Ivan the Terrible, or Americans pronounce Ivan the Terrible. He went to pretty much destroy one of the cities because it was rebellion to him, and he killed everybody, men, women, children. Whoever would come close to it, he will kill, because he thought that was God's command to him. So, yeah, misinterpretations have big time applications for some people in different times. So let's move on to verse 3, verse 22. I think 22, yeah. You shall not fear them, for it is the Lord your God who fights for you. If you read Joshua, notice sometimes God gives Israel victory and sometimes not. Ultimately, like, especially it relates to like the fight against sin. Like, for example, in book of Galatians, let's say chapter 5, talks about fruits of the, deeds of the flesh and fruits of the spirit. And then, interesting thing, is it never yourself, posit to keep you from doing the things you want to do. So for the desires of the flesh are against the spirit, and the desires of the spirit are against the flesh. For those are opposite to each other to keep you from doing the things you want to do. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. So where is the fight? I also forget. No, I think it's chapter 4. The Father. Trials. Anyway, but like the spirit fights against the flesh, and ultimately the Spirit of God will win if you are predestined, if you've been loved with eternal love. He predestined you unto adoption, and also in Romans 8 talks about He predestined you unto being conformed in the image of Christ. So going back once again to Deuteronomy, you know what, I'm not gonna do lots of cross references. If you know the scriptures, I'm gonna tell you where it's at least by somewhere there, and I'll let you study for yourself. So let's continue chapter. We stopped at chapter 3 and verse 26. Interesting thing it says, but the Lord was angry with me, talk about Moses, because of you, and would not listen to me. And the Lord said to me, enough from you, do not speak to me of this matter again. Go up to the top of Misgah and Lift up your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward, and look at it with your eyes, for you shall not go over this Jordan. But charge Joshua and encourage and strengthen him, for he shall go over at the head of this people, and he shall put them in possession of the lands that you shall see. So it's already been said that Joshua, or should we just say Yeshua of Nun, Joshua of Nun, since Moses, there's multiple actually. I mean, the whole Testament is full of shadows of Christ, like Joshua the Conqueror. Interesting thing, like there's a one Christian song which is kind of hilarious. They trying to take Book of Hebrews, singing Jesus, author of salvation, he rose and conquered the grave. He rose and conquered the grave. But think of this: author of salvation, he rose and conquered the grave. Author conquering stuff. Well, actually, like interesting thing, like in Mouth, William Mouth, Interlinear Bible, and Book of Hebrews talks actually could be translated as a champion or conqueror. So could actually like if you look at Hebrews and just change the word, instead of Jesus author, you just say Jesus conqueror of salvation. He rose and conquered the death. He rose and conquered the death. So interesting thing is that some of the lyrics or some of the translations that people use, or some mistranslations I should say, because like when you think of Jesus being an author, like author I would think of automatically as William Shakespeare, but a conqueror, you have William the Conqueror, the same country, England. I think he was like William the Conqueror was like what, in the 11th century, something like that, and Shakespeare what, 15th. So two different characters. One is writing stories, plays to entertain the court. Other one is conquering other tribes or other kingdom to be the king of England. So yeah. So the point, but coming back, notice this: God was angry, the Lord was angry with me, referring to Moses. And and there's a temporal, you should say, indignation even on Christians if we sin, yet he's in lots of times this indignation, temporal indignation, becomes a discipline, which God disciplines his chosen, predestined children whom he truly loves, and they would be disciplined, and it would cause them to repent from their sins. Of course, not all the sins are disciplined, because otherwise we would not be able to withstand Lord's chastisement in this life. So, continue on. Let's go to the Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 2, and it says this: and you shall not add to the word that I command you, nor take away from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you. And when I was a covenant theologian, supposedly, you have to really like take away some of the sacramental laws, replace them to fit in our sites in order to make it Christian-like. And now I don't really care, because how I understand Great Commission is this: go make disciples of all nations, baptizing them, baptizing them in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach them all things that I have commanded. First you go, you preach the gospel. You preach Christ's life, Christ's death, Christ's resurrection. You command them to repent towards Christ and believe, or repenting of the sin of unbelief first, so the person becomes a Christian, becomes a disciple of Christ. Then you baptizing them. Then you teach them all things that Christ has commanded in the New Testament. Yeah, he have to believe all things what's in the Bible, what is all in the New Testament, but obeying the commandments that's particularly in the New Covenant, which I say, but some has started in Christ's ministry. Yes, yet some of the things Christ even changed, like for example, do not take a tunic with you, extra tunic with you, or nor money bag. But then later on in the ministry, he says, well, now take a tunic, take a money bag, take a sword. If you don't have one, sell your garment and buy one. So, yeah, so the point is this, you shall not add to the word that I command you, nor take away from it. Many Christians, as I used to be myself, used to just say, okay, we just focus on 10 commandments. But if we, once I start interpreting those 10 commandments in light of the Christ teachings, particularly adultery and divorce, or I should say divorce in the New Testament, unlawful divorce equals adultery, and many teachers, preachers, pastors in the United States, I notice they pretty much give unbiblical divorce and remarriage, which is adultery. They may not realize it. They teach adultery like, it's like, can you imagine pastor would say, it's okay to commit adultery, it's okay, honey, you can marry this man even though you've been divorced. But later on we'll talk about this more, but continue on. So either you're gonna keep the whole law, or you're not under the law at all, both jurisdiction, both in the sense of justification and living wise. When I used to go to the Presbyterian church, they taught like, yeah, you are not under the law in the sense of justification, but yet you are under the law in the sense of doing or living under, which actually in book of Galatians is just totally against it. And I made a video some time ago called Letter of Galatians versus Presbyterians. So I'm not going to go into too deep about it. So let's go down to the verse Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 13. And he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, that is the 10 commandments, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And the Lord commanded me that time to teach you statutes and rules, that you might do them in the land that you are going over to possess. So interesting thing, in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, it talks about 10 commandments as being pretty much the ministry of condemnation and of death. So let's read it. 2 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 1. Are we beginning to command ourselves again, or do we need as some do letters of recommendation to you or from you. You yourselves are our letter of recommendation, written on our hearts, to know and read by all. And you shall, and you show that you are a letter from Christ delivered by us, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not on tablets of stone, but on the tablets of human hearts. Such is the confidence that we have through Christ towards God. Not that we are sufficient in ourselves to claim anything as coming from us, but our sufficiency is from God, who has made us sufficient to be ministers of a new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives gives life. Now, if the minister of death, carved in letters on stone, came with such glory that Israel could not gaze at Moses' face, but Moses' face, because of his glory, which was being brought to an end, was it not ministry of the Spirit have even more glory? For if there was glory in the ministry of condemnation, the ministry of righteousness must far exceed in glory. So, Ten Commandments is the ministry of condemnation. Yes, it is holy, but it is a ministry of condemnation. So, so that's my view of it. Christians are not under 10 commandments, any commandments of the law of Moses. Yet, why God gave the book, why God preserved His word? Well, first of all, He promised. And how are we gonna test the spirits? How do we know that it is a Holy Spirit within a person, or it's a spirit of the demons? You know, like many Pentecostals who speaks in so-called in tongues, which is actually foreign languages if you study Acts chapter 2. But anyway, interesting thing. Describes idolatry. Deuteronomy 4 verse 15 and 16. Therefore, watch yourselves very carefully, since you saw no form on that day that the Lord spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire. Beware lest you act corruptly by making a carved image for yourselves in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the air, the likeness of anything creeps on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. Beware lest you raise your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, you be drawn away and bow down to them and serve them, things that the Lord your God has allotted to all the peoples under the whole heaven. So interesting thing is like, okay, Roman Catholics, for example, would say, okay, this is the Old Testament and whatever. Interesting thing, I think it's in the Book of Revelation. It's quite similar language. Let me just find this real quick. Is it Revelation? Forgot which chapter. Show morality. Show repented. Spit. Was it? I'm trying to think of which chapter is it. 19. Look it up real quick. Idol, make believe. Trying to remember. Which one was it? Worshipped his image, but then later on talks about not just worshipped his image, but which was made. Let's find this goal. Forgot which chapter is it. 16th, 17th. It's image once again. Worshipped its image. What is it? Was it 15 chapter 15? Let me see. No, not 15. Gold. Let me see. King James. Where is it? King James. Worshipped his image. Image, a likeness that is literally statue, profile, figurative representation. I'm trying to look for it. Man. Oh, my bad. It's Revelation 2, Revelation 9, verse 20. So, like, if you're talking to a Roman Catholic person, trying to show them the scriptures instead of going to Exodus or Deuteronomy, and it says this: the rest of mankind who were not killed by those plagues did not repent of the works of their hands, nor gave up worshipping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze and stone and wood, which cannot see or hear or walk. Nor did they repent of their murders or their sorceries or their sexual immorality or their theft. So, point is this, that some of the things of Old Testament goes along with the New Testament. So let's continue on. I hope it helped. Take care for getting mentioning the form. Okay, going back to Deuteronomy. So it's once again reiterates verse 23. Take care lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make a carved image, the form of anything that is the Lord your God has forbidden you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. So, once again, it reiterates, but continue on. Interesting thing, verse 31. For the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not leave you or destroy you or forget the covenant with your fathers that he swore to them. So God is merciful with those who God has a covenant with. And covenant fulfilled in Abraham, and every believer is Abraham's son or daughter. So the point is this. God is merciful for those whom he predestined to be under his covenant. So notice before the chapter 3, I showed you that God commanded to utterly destroy men, women, children of certain nations. So think about verse 39. Now therefore today I lay it on your hearts that the Lord is God in heaven above and on the earth beneath. There is no other. Therefore you shall keep his statutes and his commandments which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in that day that the Lord your God is giving you for all time. So anyway, continue on. Once again, here there is covenant chapter 5. Going back to chapter 5, verse 9. You shall not bow down. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquities of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. Interesting thing, I noticed this. Nobody kept the whole law. It's, they attempted, but ultimately everybody been saved by faith, by grace through faith in God or Yahweh in that time. So by the works of the law no flesh shall be justified, it says in Galatians. So if you're trying to catch up and trying to, make yourself better, it will not work, because apart from faith in God, you cannot please God. All right, next I want to focus. Interesting thing is that what's his name? Verse 15. Besides keeping a Sabbath, that you shall not work, nor any worker within you cannot work. Interesting thing. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and a stretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commands you to keep the Sabbath day. Notice this, that talks about they changed it once again. Your male servant or your female servant, or your ox or your donkey or your sojourner. It's like that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. And it's like, notice this, the translators, almost like on purpose changed the meaning of it, and it should be bondman or bond or slave, actually, because interesting thing is, like, it should be translated as slave, but they decide to translate as a servant, which is totally changes the meaning, because they were not servants, they were slaves. Servant is the one who gets paid, slave is the one who doesn't get paid and have to do whatever the master tells them to do. So yeah, and what's some I know some of the Christians trying to explain away, but I'm not. Slavery was legal. It was what's the name? It had some rules of the slavery, but it's still a slavery. Which interesting thing. Neither shall you commit adultery. We're gonna come back to this as soon as start talking about divorce, because Christ particularly talked about that, and everybody trying to jump out of it, especially big mega church preachers, or either doesn't want to talk about this issue, or just trying to demonize, make people like me look stupid. But it's okay. It's okay. So, going back, interesting thing, it's multiple times I noticed in book of Deuteronomy is reiteration, such as this. Oh, that they had such a heart as this, always to fear me and to keep all my commandments, that it might go well with them, and with their descendants forever. So interesting thing is to me is like throughout Deuteronomy, God always reminds them. And once again, chapter 6, verse 4. Actually, verse 4 and 5. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And those words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as forelets between your eyes. So interesting thing is that it's many commands, and you shall teach them diligently to your children. Interesting thing is that how many fathers teach their children the fear of the Lord? Well, first of all, if they themselves never studied it, how's they going to teach somebody else? So if you're a husband, you should wash your wife in the word of the Lord. How you gonna wash her if you never studied yourself? You haven't really read it, haven't really memorized it, haven't really studied it. How you gonna teach this to your children? Something about it. Continue on. Interesting thing. Verse Deuteronomy 6:16 says, "You shall not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Misa." And interesting thing, that's when Christ been tempted, he quotes this exact verse. Well, I mean half of the verse, I should say. I think it's chapter 4. There we go. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Interesting things. It's quotes Deuteronomy, and some of the people didn't catch it. Where did Christ? There we go. At least John Gill catched it. So interesting thing is that what's the name? Some people do test the Lord and gets reproved by him for it. So careful. Once again, in Deuteronomy 6, last verse, it says, "And it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to do all these commandments before the Lord our God, as he has commanded us." So once again, it's reiteration, all his commandment, all this commandment, all his statutes, to do all the statutes. So not essential, like some people, like the Great Commission is this: go make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, teach them all essential commandments that I have commanded to you. So I guess hopefully you get the point. If not, check out the video about essentials and non-essentials is unbiblical, or dividing essentials and non-essentials is unbiblical. So let's continue on. Hopefully we'll get to some interesting parts soon. Interesting thing. Chapter 7, verse 1 through 3 talks about when the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are entering to take possession of it, and clears away many nations before you, the Hivites, the uh, Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, 7 nations more numerous and mighty as that you. And when the Lord your God gives them over to you and you defeat them, then you must devote them to complete destruction. You shall not make no covenant with them or show no mercy to them. You shall not intermarry with them, give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters of for your sons, for they would turn away your sons from following me to serve other gods. Then the anger of the Lord would be kindled against you, and he would destroy you quickly. So God, if you disobey, you don't destroy them, you try to intermarry with them, God will destroy Jews. That's pretty much the summary. Which says you shall not intermarry with them. In the New Covenant, actually, part of the New Testament, you can marry anybody, but you have to marry in the Lord. 1 Corinthians 7. Only in the Lord. It doesn't matter either you're Amorite, Canaanite, Hivite, Hittite, whatever, Jebusite, doesn't matter. Either you're black, white, Asian, whatever. It doesn't matter. If you're in the Lord, you can marry that person. This person should have the same standard as you, which is the Word of God. Continue on. 7. Oh yeah. Let's go to verse 12. Notice this. And because you have listened to those rules and keep and to do them, the Lord your God will keep with you the covenant and the steadfast love that He swore to your fathers. He will love you, bless you, and multiply you. He will also bless the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your ground, your grain and your wine and your oil, and increase of your herds and the young of your flock, uh, uh, in the land that He swore to your fathers to give to you. You shall be blessed above all peoples. There shall not be male or female barren among you or among your livestock. And the Lord will take away from you all sickness and none of the evil disease of Egypt that you knew He afflict on you, but He will lay them on all who hate you. And you shall consume all the peoples that the Lord your God will give over you. Your eye shall not pity them, neither shall you serve their gods, for that would be a snare to you. So notice this: if you obey, God will bless you with pretty much herds and the young of your flock and the land. You're gonna be financially and physically blessed, which is not part of the new covenant. Interesting thing, like in if you want to compare blessings and curses of old covenant versus new covenant, suggest you would go to the Luke chapter 6, and it talks about woes versus blessings. So, and he lifted up his voice on his eyes on his disciples and said, blessed be blessed be poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are blessed that hunger now, for ye shall be filled. Blessed that weep now, for ye shall laugh. Blessed are ye when men shall hate you, and when they shall separate you from their company, and shall reproach you, and cast out your name as evil for Son of Man's sake. Rejoice ye in that day, and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven, for in the like manner did their fathers unto the prophets. But woe, woe, alas, grief. Actually, some of the translations translate cursed, or woe, or cursed unto you that you are rich, for you have received your reconciliation. Woe unto you that are filled, are full, that ye shall hunger. Woe unto you that laugh now, for ye shall mourn and weep. Woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, for so they did their fathers to the false prophets. So blessings and curses are different, which is part of the part of the New Testament. Continue on. So Deuteronomy, coming back to Deuteronomy. Interesting thing, I kind of mentioned in previous video, it talks about God being awesome. Some people doesn't find the true God of the Bible being awesome, but actually, how is it? Mighty and terrible, or the problem is that to revere. So awesome, actually terrifying, I would say more, I mean, the more modern word should be uh, uh, the Lord thy God is among you, a mighty God and terrifying. So it's morally to revere, to fear, causally to frighten, afraid, be make, afraid, dread, fear, reverence, see terrible. So the point is that, yeah, God is terrifying. Christ says, do not fear man who killed the body but cannot kill the soul, but fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell, which is God. Continue on. So many chapters. Keep his commandments. Interesting thing. Verse 3. And he humbled you and let you hunger, and fed you with manna which you didn't know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Interesting things that God, he humbled you, the God Yahweh humbled you, let you hunger. Sometimes God even let you hunger, so he will humble you through starvation. So then he will feed you if you his elect. And if you're not his elect, sometimes he'll let you starve to death. without hearing of Christ, like some of the North Koreans, for example, in prison. God created for His own purpose, for His glory, and some of the glory will be revealed by destruction of the wicked for all eternity, even though they did suffer in this life. Referring to the North Korean defectors, prisoners. Continue on. Let's see which verse. Yeah, and notice this that notice this. Man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. See, like I notice, Christ was tempted in the wilderness by Satan again. Kind of commented on this, and Christ used this verse when Satan actually, let's just read this. Let's find this. It's Matthew chapter 4 says, "If you are the Son of God, command those stones to become loaves of bread." It's like, sometimes, what's the name? He tells them to perform a miracle. Hey, it wouldn't be a good idea to perform a miracle? You're starving and stuff. And sometimes no, God sometimes do want you to starve, so that you would live by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. And some people, they live into luxury and they become lukewarm, just like Laodicean church, which was physically rich yet spiritually poor or spiritually dead. So anyway, continue on. Deuteronomy, not His commandments, apply. Chapter 9. Chapter 9, verse 4. Do not say in your heart, after the Lord your God has thrust them out before you, it is because of my righteousness that the Lord has brought me in to possess this land. Whereas it is because of the wickedness of those nations that the Lord is driving them out before you. Not because of your righteousness or uprightness of your heart are you going in to possess their land, but because of the wickedness of those nations, the Lord your God is driving them out before you, and that He may confirm the words that the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Some of the preachers chants, well, they were too wicked. Well, the problem is that everybody is wicked. Everybody. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. The reason why God chose Israel, because He made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And actually there was two covenants according to the book of Galatians. There's one with a spiritual Israel, was one with the physical Israel. Anyway, so interesting thing is that some Christians trying to justify genocide of those wicked nations because, well, they were so wicked. Well, everybody wicked before God's sight. So it's in order to fulfill God's promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Anyway, continue on. Again, let's skip to chapter 10, verse 12. And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God requires of you, but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep the commandments and statutes of the Lord, which I commanding you today for your good. So once again, he reiterates what the love of God is to keep his commandments. Jesus Christ says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments in Gospel of John. So that's the definition of love, keeping his commandments. Interesting again, once again. You shall therefore love the Lord your God and keep his charge, his statutes, his rules, and his commandments always. Once again, it's like one of the main points of book of Deuteronomy. Once again, verse 8. You shall therefore keep the whole commandment that I command you today, that you may be strong and go in and take possession on the land that you are going over to possess. Again, verse 13, it's like again and again. And if you indeed obey my commandments that I command you today, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Interesting thing, verse 26 says this. See, I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you today, and the curse if you do not obey the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside from the way that I am commanding you today, to go after other gods that you have not known. Shut down. It's a brief explanation of what actually tithe mean. Interesting thing, like, by the way, if you're a Christian, you're not obligated. This pastor said, oh, you need to bring a tithe. Well, you bring them this tithe to them. Verse 17. You may not eat within your towns the tithe of your grain and of your wine and of oil, or the firstborn of your herd, or your flock, or any of your offerings that you woe, of your freewill offering, or the contribution that you present. But you shall eat them before the Lord your God in the place that the Lord your God will choose, and your sons and your daughters and your males servant and the females Levites. So tithe was not even a money. It was grain, wine, oil, firstborn of your herd or your flock. I mean, first of all, like, if you want to give, you can give. But I mean, sad to say that most of the churches who are 501c3, they would neglect the commandments, they would neglect widows and orphans and poor. And pastors who have 2 arms, 2 legs, normal head and a degree would not even get a job, even a part-time job, It should be plurality of pastors, teachers, evangelists, that they would equip the saints unto a ministry, that the saints would be able to minister themselves. So, but it's kind of side notes. Let's continue on. Once again, verse 28 says this: be careful to obey all those words that I command you, that it may go well with you and with your children after you forever, when you do what is good and right in the sight of your God. Whatever is right in God's eyes is right, and whatever is wrong in His eyes is wrong. This series sometimes we try to Christians moralize things, but ultimately, like I said, the change of the priesthood, the law has also changed the whole law. You cannot add or subtract from the law. So, anyway, yeah, just like I said, verse 32. Anything that I command you, you shall be careful to do. You shall not add to it or take from it. It's like when you divide law on three categories: moral, judicial, and sacramental. You have to add or take away, especially taking away. Usually people taking away say, well, 1/3 of the Deuteronomy have to be kept, then another 2/3 have to be taken away, not realizing that the whole covenant was made with the nation of Israel, not with you. Continue on. There we go. Chapter 13. If a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arise among you and give you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonders that he tells you comes to pass, and if he says, let you go after other gods which you have not known, and let us serve them, you shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Notice this. Arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder. And the sign or wonder that he tells you comes to pass. But then he trying to make you worship another gods. It's automatically it's automatically that God is testing you. For example, in modern day, there's some preachers who preach well, yet, hey, Buddha, or especially in a Baptist/Protestant circles, let us go worship the God of Roman Catholics, which is another God in itself. So, yeah, and there are plenty of Baptists, plenty of Protestants who tell the truth, who preach the Word of God, yet let us go, or they say, oh, it's okay, Roman Catholic worship the same God as we do. No, no, no. It's a lie from pit of hell. Continue on. Verse 6. If your brother, Deuteronomy 13 verse 6, if your brother the son of your mother, or your son of your daughter, or the wife you embrace, or your friend who is as your own soul entices you secretly, saying, "Let us go and serve other gods," which neither you nor your fathers have known, some of the gods of peoples who are around you, neither whether near you or far off from you, from the end, from the one end of the earth to the other. You shall not yield to him or listen to him, nor shall your eye pity him, nor shall you spare him, nor shall you conceal him, but you shall kill him. Your hand shall be the first against him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people. You shall stone him to death with stones, because he sought to draw you away from the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You know, Christ says in Luke chapter 14, "Now the great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers, yes, even his own life, he can't be my disciple. Whoever doesn't bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple." In Galatians chapter 1 talks about Paul being astonished that some people already joined for another gospel, but even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you, or even if we or your mother or your brother or your sister or your father should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. As I said before, and I say now again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed. You know, it's like in many Protestant circles, Baptist circles, some of the doctrines, which is obviously from Scripture, like for example, homosexuality is a sin, and if the person doesn't repent, he's gonna burn in hell. Yet, as soon as some of the parents find out, and those parents called claim to be Christians find out, oh, my child is a homosexual. Oh, I love my child. Oh, let me change the Bible a little bit. It's okay to be gay now. No, have no pity upon this child. He believes in another God. He worships another God. He believes a false gospel. Let him be accursed. That's a New Testament application of Deuteronomy. But continue on. Coming back to tithe. Deuteronomy 14, verse 22. You shall tithe all the yield of your seeds that comes from the field year by year, and before the Lord your God, in the place that you will choose to make his name dwell there, you shall eat the tithe of your grain, of your wine, and of your oil, and the firstborn of your herd and flock, that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always. And if by the way too long for you, so you are not able to carry the tithe, when the Lord your God blesses you, because the place is too far from you, which the Lord your God chooses to set his name, then you shall turn it into money and bind up the money and in your hand and go to the place that the Lord your God chooses, and spend the money for whatever you desire, oxen or sheep or wine or strong drink, or like a vodka, or tequila if you like. Uh, whatever your appetite craves, and you shall eat there before the Lord your God, and rejoice in you and your household. uh, Sometimes some of the preachers, it's hilarious. They ask for tithe and offering, and I was like, well, you know what? Next time I shall bring. If somebody asks for the tithe, I'll buy some vodka or tequila. No, I don't like tequila. Smirnoff Ice or margarita, and like bring it to the to the church. That's my tithe and offering for today. uh, anyway, but that's only if they want a tithe and offering. So, but if they ask, hey, you know, a missionary, no problem. Uh, Poor and widow, orphan, sure. But like people, I mean, it's just like it's sad. People didn't even study the scripture. But anyway, let's continue. Oh, almost not on finished yet. At the end of every 3 years, you shall bring all the tithe of your precede in the same year, and lay it up within your towns. So what's the it was once in every 3 years, not every week, not once a month, every year, but at the same time you eat your tithe and your offering of a strong drink, whatever you desire. Ah, continue on. How much already made this video? Oh wow. Yeah, let's speed up a little bit. Oh yeah, in regards to slavery, chapter 15, verse 12. If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you, he shall serve you 6 years, and in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. And when you let him go free from you, you shall not let him go empty-handed. You shall furnish him liberally out of your flock, out of your threshing floor, and out of your winepress. As the Lord your God has blessed you, you shall give it to him. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Therefore I command you this today. So, and then talks about if it's a female slave, because is it female slave verse 17, I think. Then you shall work up, and he shall be a slave for her. And to your female slave you shall do the same. And she is like, yeah, if it's a female, she's your slave forever. If it's a male, on the 7th year you shall let him go, unless he wants to stay with you, love his children and his wife, whom you gave to him. But anyway, so yeah, slavery definitely is okay in the Old and the New Testament. However, I do have a problem slavery based upon race, like in the United States before Civil War. So anyway, let's continue on. Let's continue on. Bring. Okay. Okay. You shall dance. You shall come to the Levite priests. All right. Let's go to Deuteronomy 18, verse 9. And when you come out of the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow abominable practices of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination, or tells fortune, or interprets omens, or a sorcerer. Interesting, like word sorcerer. Mr. John Gill. What is it? Sorcerer. So in time, enchanter, master, anything. But interesting thing, like in Galatians. Actually, wait. Yeah, Galatians. Interesting thing is that Galatians and the Book of Revelation is two different words for sorcerers. One, let's look at it. Book of Galatians, works of the flesh, works of the flesh, and one of them is sorcery. But let's look at King James. Witchcraft, pharmakia, or some people medication, even pharmacy, or magic, literal or figurative, sorcery. But then interesting thing in Book of Revelation talks about sorcery. Let me just find this on my phone real quick. Hopefully, sorcery. Sorcery in Book of Revelation of it's found in Revelation 18. I think it's 18. Yeah, 18:23. Deceived by sorceries of pharmakia, medicine. So, okay, where is it? People. Where is it? Switchcraft. Let's see. Craft magic. Let's see. Oh yeah, Acts. I'm sorry, Acts 19, verse 19. Let's see, burned and before my 19 practiced curious arts. What's the curious arts? Work perigos works all around. That is of busybody, courteous arts. Interesting. Instead of magic, huh? So it's like being a busybody, of books of busybodying. Interesting. It's like modern day would be like, I don't know, some Cosmos magazines, whatever. Useless stuff. Interesting. Yeah. Strong. SB. No. Revelation 9:21. Fornication. Source pharmakia, huh? So it's really the same word. The interesting thing is that the source of Jezebel, whore of Rome, has been famous. Exorcisms, enchantment. Where is it? Oh, Revelation 21:8. See, whoremongers. What is it? Pharmausis, or drug, that is spelled drugger, magician. Interesting. What about Revelation 22:15? 22:15. It's the same for pharmausis. So drug, like, even like right now I'm living in Colorado, and drugs are legal, like marijuana and stuff, and that's condemned. Like, especially, I mean, I understand, like medicine, like you are truly sick, but if you're doing it for recreational purposes and you practicing, don't be deceived. You shall not inherit the kingdom of God. Continue on. Deuteronomy, going back to Deuteronomy. Alright, this is my show. Okay, there's a law, war, war laws and stuff, which I already kind of talked about, that, yeah, you shall surely destroy them, have no, but interesting thing, if you talk to atheists and stuff, they probably bring this text up, and yeah, you shall not commit adultery, but at the same time, what's the name, you can say almost like a rape of a prisoner of war who is a female. Check this out. Or making her by force your wife, pretty much. Okay, let me just read it in normal English. When you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, and you bring her home to your house, she shall shave her head and uh, pierce her nails, and she shall take off the clothes in which she was captured, and shall remain in your house, and lament her father and her mother a full month. After that, you may go into her. Well, it's pretty much allegory for having sex, and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. But if you no longer delight in her, and you shall let her go where she wants, but you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave, since you have humiliated her. Interesting. I wonder, like, what humiliated, because it's gonna be brought up very, very soon. Humiliated. Depressed, literally, sin by mistake, abase self, afflict, chasten self, deal hardly with, defile, exercise force, gentleness, humble self, hurt, ravish. I mean, something really bad, but let's just be honest. Go into her. She weeps and cries about her father and her mother, and for full month after you can go into her, and most likely it was non-consensual. So let's just be frank. That's why we talked about they shall not commit adultery in the beginning, but Christ says, he who looks upon a woman with lust after her has committed adultery. He who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her commit adultery. So that's why I say I don't believe that this eternal law, I think I skipped it, about divorce and remarriage, about honoring your father and mother. Like, okay, the new commandment is that even in Ephesians, who is my father and mother? Those who doing the will of God. And now and it's not just in Ephesians talks about obey your father and mother who are in the Lord. So yeah, the presumption is that Christian parents should do right, should train their child where this child go, but at the same time there are many people who claim to be Christians who are commit incest and bunch of other evil things. So they shall honor your father and mother, particularly talks about when they obey God in the first place. If they tell you to go worship another God, in the same book Deuteronomy, you shall surely put him to death. Continue on. It talks about, well, that's actually, this one is about Christ, which is quotes in a book of Galatians. And if a man have committed a sin worthy of death, and he be put to death, and thou hang him on a tree, his body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but thou shalt at any wise bury him that day, for he that is hanged is cursed of God. So in Galatians talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, that Christ, who knew no sin, became sin for, well, it's in 1 Corinthians, but sin became sin for us. He propitiated sin upon the cross for our sins, for sins of believers. I think it's Galatians 2. Was him. Walk, justify, sinners. Oh, sinners are for Christ. No. Forgot which chapter is that. Galatians. Oh, actually, you know what? I should have just clicked on Mr. What's his name? Now I can't remember. Oh, 22, verse 25. And it's quoted by John Gill, but he doesn't see the connection. Oh, wait, 22, 20. Oh, I'm sorry. 21. I'm sorry, going back to 21. 21, 23. And that would be Galatians 3:16. Yeah, Galatians 3:13. Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, made himself a curse upon us, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. So, but going back to the Deuteronomy 22, where, of course, our atheists trying to corner many Christians, and they do, because most of the Christians never studied the whole Bible in depth. So, of course. So let's start at verse 21. Okay. But if, okay, the thing is true, what's name was not found a virgin, then they shall bring out the young woman to the door of your father's house, and the man of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done an outrageous thing in Israel by whoring in her father's house. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. If a man found lying with the wife of another, both of them shall die, the man who laid with the woman and the woman. So you shall purge the evil from Israel. If there is a betrothed virgin and a man meets her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out of the gate of the city, and you shall stone them to death with stones, the young woman, because she didn't cry out for help, though she was in the city, and the man, because he violated his neighbor's wife. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. But if in the open country a man meets a young woman who is betrothed, and the man sees her and lies with her, the only man who lie with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. She has committed no offense, punishable by death. For this case is like that of a man attacking and murdering his neighbor, because he met her in the open house, and through the betrothed young woman cried for help. There was no help to rescue her. Continue on. Notice the same words. If a man meets, let's look at the what's the Hebrew language. If a man finds a damsel, made a virgin, finds catch being befall, or we can say a rape, that is a virgin, that is not betrothed, not just this betrothed, is like in being engaged. If she's not, if she's a virgin, if she's not engaged, and lay hold on her and lie with, notice this, lay hold, talks about pretty much by force, using force on her, lie with her, and they be found. The man that lay with her shall give unto damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has humbled her. And once again, look at the definitions, the same thing. Defile is like pretty much, we talked about the prisoner of war, female prisoner of war, POW being made to be a wife, so she been raped pretty much by her. He may not put her away or divorce her all his days. Man shall not take his father's wife, nor discover his father's skirt, father's nakedness, or whatever. So the point is this: yes, it's a rape. Let's just be honest. It's a rape, and whatever God thinks is right is right. And like I said before, Christians are not under Mosaic law, and some of the people who promote historical theonomy, because I just met one at least person who believes in theonomy, but his theonomy is nothing close to the historical theonomy, where they're trying to take some of the Mosaic laws and implement upon the whole country, like England did, Russia did, United States, pre-United States English colonies has done. To me, I'm just whatever, more like a Roger Williams. Actually, on Facebook, I wrote a post about, a note about it, which I agree with him, but from different scriptures. So now I would kind of stay away from being a leader in the government. I won't say Christians should stay away totally, but position of leadership in the government, it's like, I don't want to moralize anybody. Hey, good job, you've been doing good. And now, what's them? Even if it's if it's an unbeliever, especially, it's like, no, your righteousness is a filthy rags. So, but continue on. Balaam 23. Let's go to 23. What else is interesting? Oh yeah, verse 18. You shall not bring the fee of a prostitute or wages of a dog into the house of the Lord, into payment for any vow, for both of those are an abomination to the Lord your God. You shall not charge interest or loan to your brother, interest money, interest on food, interest on anything that is lent for interest. So interesting thing is that many Christians, I mean, never mind. Like I said, we are not under the law of Moses, but if if you are truly brother in Christ, you just want to forgive him debt. If he's true brother in Christ, like I said, which is another topic anyway. But like I said, if you watch my videos, I think you can understand what I mean. Let's go to chapter 24, which starts off with divorce. When a man takes a wife and marries her, if then she and if then she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found something indecent in her, and he writes uh, her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends it out of his house, and she departs out of his house, and if she goes and becomes another man's wife, and the later man hates her and writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of the house, or if the later man dies who took her to be his wife, then the former husband who sent her away may not take her again to be his wife after she has been defiled, for that is an abomination before the Lord. And if you shall not bring sin upon the land that the Lord your God is giving you for inheritance. But let's compare it to the Gospel of Matthew. That's why I said I believe that Christ's law is a different law. I think it's chapter 16. I think 16, 15. No, 14. No. Which chapter is that? Ah, there we go. Chapter 19. So, verse 3. And Pharisees came up to him and tested him by saying, is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a male shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh, so that are no longer two but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. They said to him, why then did Moses command you to give a certificate of divorce and send her away? Because of your hardness of your heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. The disciples said to him, if such is the case, if a man with his wife, it is better not to marry. But he said to them, not everyone can receive this saying, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who has been from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let the one who is able to receive it. So the point is this, that they realize, the disciples realize what kind of severe teaching Christ teaches, that if whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. So like for example, let's just take a severe case. If you study it a lot, there's a lots of sexless marriages going on in this country due to different reasons, which is totally different topic. But let's say that wife, to some degree, well, doesn't really matter why she would not want to have sex more than like, okay, one, let's say 3 times a year. She only wants to have she wants to have only sex 3 times a year or 4 times a year. Sad to say, which is, like I said, different topic. You can research it. Just type in sexless marriage. It's just sad. Some of the people, like, they haven't been with each other for years, and then they, oh, okay, let's go to the doctor or some psychologist or whatever. Well, I mean, I can explain this in multiple verses and passages, but the point is this: whatever. Like, so the husband decides, I want to divorce her. I'm not happy in this marriage. Bye, whatever. And like it talks about that, except for sexual immorality, and just say, let's look at the Greek. Except for fornication, harlotry, idolatry. Okay, let's just say physical, sexual sin, like not just mental, because some of the people, some of the pastors let either men or women divorce because the spouse looking at the pornography, which I would say, yes, it's a sin before God. He who looks at a woman with lust after her has committed adultery. But from human perspective, everybody, like, trying to find me a couple who would say, hey, honey, all my life, 5 years, 10 years, all my life, I never committed mental adultery, meaning lusted after a man or a woman, whoever you are. I mean, if you be honest with yourself, you will find nobody. So the point is this: it is a physical adultery. It's just like where is it? Lust, then divorce. It has been said, whosoever shall put away his wife, let him give the certificate in the board. But I say unto you that whoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causes her to commit adultery. Notice this: he causes her, innocent party, to commit adultery, and whoever marries her that is divorced commits adultery. Think of this: a divorced woman, like for example, the guy, for example, drunk, like he's drunk, he doesn't work, whatever, even domestic violence, beats his wife. Many pastors would automatically, of course, divorce, of course. But the problem is this: fornication, physical fornication. If you're gonna say, oh, it's a spiritual, you pastor who said this, have you not committed spiritual adultery, spiritual fornication against God? Have you asked any other, that whole congregation of yours at one point of their marriage has committed either either some kind of adultery, idolatry, like spiritual idolatry, or mental adultery or fornication. So the point is this, that if you're gonna divorce, let this wife divorce. I mean, it's pretty much like you can, for any reason, you can just write certificates of divorce and remarriage all the time. This is your interpretation. So I'm saying this, saving for the cause of fornication causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries her that is divorced commits adultery. So, for example, a husband drinks, parties, doesn't work, so pastor would say, oh, okay, you can get divorced with your husband. This woman, who's supposedly innocent, you making her commit adultery, and the guy who's supposedly in a shining armor, like okay, this guy like works job and a half, one full-time job and a part-time job. You're like, oh man, this guy is Christian, blah blah blah, really good morals. He takes this woman. Whom shall we call this guy? He's adulterer. Now he takes a man's wife and commits adultery because this guy is alive. Romans 7, it's actually Romans 7 is more of an illustration of the law. Very interesting thing that know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, that is, the law has dominion over a man as long as he liveth. For the woman that has a husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he liveth. But if the husband is dead, she is loosened from the law of her husband, so that if while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, if she okay, I'm just reading it in normal English. So accordingly, accordingly, she will be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive. But if her husband dies, she is freed from the law, and she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. So, sorry, if the husband did not commit physical adultery, and your pastor says, oh, it's okay to divorce, he makes you to commit adultery. Interesting thing, like I kind of brought this up in a couple of videos, but like what's his name, when the first time I read Godly Home by Richard Baxter, interesting thing, like he wrote that if a woman is beaten, like domestic violence, get beat by her husband, like physically get beaten up, he just says to a wife, it's better to die as a martyr. Like, well, reality is that sometimes many preachers, I notice, I listened to this sermon by, I think it was Jeff Durbin, on is divorce is a sin. It's like, yeah, it's adultery, and the woman, if she divorces her husband, shall be called adulteress for the rest of her life. Like, for example, Andrew Jackson, he married a woman, and this woman, I forgot her name, she applied for divorce, yet her husband did not give her divorce, but she was already married. So later on in I think it's like one of the elections, first time when future President Jackson at that time ran for an office. What's him? Is it second time? Or it's like a second term he ran for it, and his wife died because of heart attack. Because this fact has been used in the presidential elections that pretty much Andrew Jackson's wife was called an adulteress or a whore or worse. I'm not quite sure, but like the point is that sometimes we need to think about it and really study the text, because interesting thing I noticed about modern day preachers about divorce is they go to Malachi, God hates divorce, where it talks about God hates divorce, and pretty much talks to Israel, where he kind of almost tells them that, hey, I'm gonna divorce you, unfaithful wife, because you've been whoring after other gods. So yeah, study for yourself before you get a divorce. You know, you say, oh well, love covers a multitude of sins. Grace forgive. Well, now you give the license for divorce, and especially if you're a pastor, when you have, or like a minister like Jeff Durbin, who has been listened by thousands of people. You just pretty much, like, if you like somebody like that, you pretty much give license to divorce for thousands. Now you are guilty of like Pharisees, for thousands of divorces, maybe because of you, because you omitted some of the verses, but whatever. Anyway, continue on. Let's finish this. There's some curses in chapter 27. Blessings. The Lord will cause your enemies to rise against you, the future before. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting thing. Like, there's a comparison of curses and blessings in the book of Deuteronomy. So chapter 27, verse 3. So let's start at verse 1. And if you faithful obey the voice uh, of the Lord your God, be careful to do all his commandments, and I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth, and all of those blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of your womb, and blessed the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your cattle, increase of your herds, and of the young of your flock. Blessed shall be your basket and your kindling bowl. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. The Lord will cause your enemies who rise against you to be defeated before you. But then, interesting thing, like the curses, if you disobey, but if you will not obey the voice of the Lord your God, or be careful to do all his commandments and his statutes that I command you today, then all those curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall you be in the city, and shall you be in the field. Cursed shall be your basket and your needling bowl. Cursed shall be the fruit of your womb, and the curse of your and of the fruit of your ground, and the increase of your herds. And but the New Testament, since I believe the church, the people of God, is the New Jerusalem that's coming down from heaven, and it's in a process, because until the second coming, it's not totally fulfilled, but it's in a process. It's a continual present tense type thing. So it's now there's no curse in New Jerusalem, but outside of Jerusalem there's a false converts, unbelievers, sorcerers, idolaters, etc. So yeah, honestly, like I guess hardcore texts been passed. I don't see really like any farther to go. I mean, there's some great things, you know. Oh yeah, the best, I guess, sovereign verse of I'm sorry, it's 32, verse 39 says this: See now that I, even I, He, and there is no God besides me. I kill and make alive. I wound and I heal, and there is none that can deliver out of my hand. So, absolutely sovereign God. Uh, you know, God is the one who kills and make alive. God is the one who wound and He heal, and nobody can deliver out of God's hands. So, is that interesting thing? Like besides the law, in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse, let's start with 1. This is the blessing with which Moses, the man of God, blessed the people of Israel before his death. He said, the Lord came from Sinai and dawned from Seir upon us. He shone forth from Mount Paran. He came from the 10,000 of holy ones with flame and fire at his right hand. Yes, he loved his people. All his holy ones were in his hand, and as they followed in your steps, receiving direction from you. When Moses commanded us a law as a possession for the assembly of Jacob. So, interesting thing is kind of mentioned in Jude. Never quite understood Jude, but I think honestly this is like when angel of the Lord fought against Michael, archangel, containing this despise, presuming, pronouncing blasphemy, judges, the Lord rebuke you, but those blasphemous stand. But what is it? 10,000. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his holy ones to execute judgment on all, to convict all the ungodly of their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such a ungodly way, and all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him. So this is I'm thinking about like a now we're in an army of the Lord, spiritual army, and the word of God is our sword and pierces the hearts of unbelievers. Pretty much now we are spiritual army which is battles not against flesh and blood but against principalities of this world. So anyway, I'm gonna end on this. Actually, I'm gonna end at the last chapter of Deuteronomy, chapter 34. I'm just gonna point you something. Verse 7. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eye was undimmed, and his vigor, what is it? Undimmed, and his natural force, refreshness, natural force, fleet, to vanish away, to dismay, to flee, to put to flight, lift up a standard. Interesting thing is, like, honestly, like, I listened to this one channel. It's actually talks about that, how to say, uh, I'm using how I call this, figurative language, and let you figure it out. It's interesting thing is, like, he talks about his eyes was not dim, and then all of a sudden his natural force abiding, about it. And interesting thing is that it's, like I said, they're gonna hidden, this one Hebrew scholar translated as a, he pretty much didn't need a Viagra at 120 years old. And I was like, and I was like, but you know what? That's kind of actually fits in. So, something to think about it. And then the Joshua, Yeshua, Jehovah saved. This is Joshua, the Jewish leader. Jehoshua. It's type of Christ. The Joshua, the son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses has laid his hands upon him, and the children of Israel hearkened upon him and did as the Lord commanded Moses. So, yeah, that's the end. If you've been blessed, praise the Lord. If you disagree, post a comment below. Or write me on Facebook. All right, have a good day. Bye bye.